Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 RCPP Town Hall webinar series called Creating Your Proposal. My name is Bree Hebron with Metaphase Consulting, and I'll be the moderator for this webinar. Today is June 13th, 2024, and this session is being recorded. We have over 100 participants registered for this webinar, and we look forward to presenting to you today. So during today's session, we're going to start with announcements and a brief overview of the Town Hall webinar series. Most of our time today will be focused on today's topic, which is a recap of what we've covered in this series so far. And then we'll also have an extended Q&A session today. I just want to highlight, if you've been attending this series along the way, this will be familiar to you, but there is a QR code that has the link to the survey. We take the surveys very seriously. We read all the feedback every session, and so we'd really love it if you could take a couple minutes at the end of the survey or at the end of the webinar to take the survey and just give us any feedback and recommendations for how we can, adjust the webinar series going forward. So very much appreciate the feedback you've already provided and look forward to hearing what you have to say after today. So we'll also post this in the chat, as well as this QR code will come up throughout the presentation. So just jumping into some announcements, the webinar slides and the recording for this webinar will be posted on the RCPP website as soon as possible. This is going to take a few weeks to be posted to allow some time for 508 compliance. There's a government process that needs to be followed, so we appreciate your patience there. The camera and mic will be turned off for webinar participants for the duration of the presentation. However, the chat is active, and please feel free to post your questions into the chat throughout the presentation, and we'll address those questions during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If we don't answer all the questions today, we will provide a follow-up resource in an updated FAQ posted on the RCPP How to Apply webpage. We'll also post links to important resources in the chat for you to access easily. As I mentioned, you're going to see the QR code to the survey throughout the presentation. We would greatly appreciate if you could just take a quick minute at the end to provide your feedback. And then in addition to this webinar today, we have 2 additional sessions that will cover sections of the proposal, and the registration links for those sessions are on the RCPP website under How to Apply for RCPP page. Just want to throw out our appreciation for those of you who have been with us along the journey of this webinar series. And again, thank you for the feedback you've provided. We look forward to presenting to you today, as well as seeing you in the next couple of sessions. So NRCS has engaged with Metaphase Consulting to support outreach and education. We are joined on this call today by NRCS RCPP colleagues to provide support for the Creating Your Proposal series. So as we cover this topic today, don't forget that if you have further or specific questions, especially questions that are specifically related to your local area or to your specific project, don't forget to contact your state RCPP coordinators. Contact information for each state coordinator is available on the RCPP How to Apply website, and we'll also drop that link in the chat as well. So as I mentioned, and as many of you have been with us along this journey, this webinar is one in a series of town hall webinars designed to help applicants understand proposal requirements. And this series is open to all applicants. And on the next slide, we'll take a look at sort of where we've been and where we still have left to go. So each of the webinars that we've had in this series have focused on a specific portion of the proposal, followed by a Q&A session. And the webinar topics have sort of gone in the order that it makes sense to work through in your proposal responses. Just remember that this is slightly different than the order that actually takes place in the portal, but the focus has been on some of the early decisions that you need to have made in order to be able to create the rest of your proposal effectively. So last week, as you can see on the slide, we covered AFA narrative questions. And just as a quick note at this point in the series, the proposal deadline is right around the corner. So proposals are due in the RCPP portal by 4:59 Eastern Time on July 2nd, 2024. I want to highlight, please make sure that if you have not already done so, please confirm your portal access. This is going to be critical as there can be delays to work through any technical issues with your access, and we definitely want to make sure that you're not trying to navigate that at the last minute when you're wanting to be entering your proposal information in the portal. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to my colleague, Sarah Henderson. I'm going to go off camera just to preserve bandwidth. Each of the speakers is going to briefly go on camera, but then go off of camera so that we can make sure that everybody has access. So with that, over to you, Sarah. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Bree. Bree mentioned today, the focus of our webinar today is a recap of the previous sessions that cover each of these sections of the proposal. So today we'll do a very high-level review followed by an extended Q&A. We'll talk through the type of proposal, the funding pool, partners and contributions, FA and TA, funding request, and narrative questions. There are a couple of decisions that you'll need to make about your project early on so that you can align to the right notice of funding opportunity requirements. And so the first is whether you'll be working in CCA or state multi-state. The $1.5 billion pool of funding has been divided into these two parts. If you pursue critical conservation area projects, your project must be aligned with one of the CCA priority resource concerns. The other option would be to pursue a project that is in one or many states that aligns to the broader NRCS resource concerns. The next big decision you'll need to make is what type of proposal, classic or alternative funding arrangement. The difference in these is really how much support NRCS will provide versus how much the lead partner will take on. So as you can see on the left, for RCPP classic projects, these are implemented using NRCS contracts and easements, producers, landowners, communities, in true collaboration with partner in the project. What that means in practice, you'll see in the bulleted list, NRCS reimburses directly for financial assistance activities, and they often deliver the majority of the technical assistance in support of those producer contracts and easements. So as a partner, your primary role in a RCPP Classic project is to provide outreach, monitor, measure, report on those impacts, and deliver the partner contributions that amplify NRCS funding. That's a little different than what you see on the right with AFA or alternative funding arrangements. In this case, the lead partner works directly with the producers to support the development of really an innovative conservation approach that wouldn't otherwise be available under those existing NRCS contracts and easements, right? And in that case, the lead partner will install the practices. They're going to deliver all of the project technical assistance, and NRCS support is limited to those non-delegable tasks, such as confirming eligibility of producers on the land, AGI verification, compliance things. There are different requirements for each of these. There are different things that you'll need to do in the RCPP portal for each project, so it's important you make those two decisions, align to the notice of funding opportunity that's right for your project before you begin working. Once you've made those decisions, then you can start to lay out how you'll bring contributions with yourself as the lead partner and any other partners along the way. For each project, there is just one lead partner. You can see on the left, that person is responsible for identifying the need and really oversees the design of the solution. They're also the person who is going to gather all the documents required per the NFO and submit the proposal. They get to push the button. If the project is approved, that single lead partner also coordinates all of the project activities, including reporting across all of the partners. That's different than other partners, those are called non-lead or contributing partners. What's important is that these are other organizations that are committing, delivering, and maintaining records for a specific contribution. Just as a call out for AFA projects, the lead partner is also responsible for contracting delivery of financial assistance and technical assistance, as we mentioned, according to the program requirements. Okay, we know what kind of proposal we'd like to do. We understand the difference between a lead partner and contributing partners. Now let's talk about those contributions. You can see in the diagram on the bottom portion of the screen, an RCPP project is really made up of just three things. It's the funds that you would be awarded from RCPP, plus the lead partner contributions, and those other contributions, with an asterisk that those do need to be eligible contributions, and those eligibility requirements are listed in the NFO. There are two types of contributions that either a lead partner or a contributing partner could make, and that's cash or in kind. Cash are just funds, and in-kind could be services or things also called goods. Just one last call out that there's no requirement for you to have additional partners for your proposal, but what's important is that you demonstrate that you're able to, along with the contributions, to amplify the impact of those NRCS funds. We talked about contributions, and now let's talk a little bit more about these terms that we've heard: financial assistance and technical assistance, also called FA and TA. So on the left, you'll see the financial assistance. These are a very specific list of activities. It's important to remember that RCPP funds activities. So whether you're looking at the financial assistance list on the left, which should be most of your project, or the technical assistance list on the right, these are all activities. So on the left, you'll see the kinds of practices or activities that are eligible and the associated covered program authorities. And on the right, you'll see the assistance, which is really the work that helps deliver those activities that are on the left. The bottom left, you can see the split. So again, RCPP is truly a partnership that's focused on those conservation on the ground activities. And so your proposal can request a minimum of 250,000 up to a maximum of 25 million. Regardless of the number, the quantity of funds that you request, there is a cap at 25% of TA. If you have questions about that, you can talk with your state coordinator. And then you can see the bullets on the bottom right. It's just important that when you think about this balance, that you have sufficient TA to deliver all of the activities that you have mentioned in your project. I said it's a 75-25. You can request a variance. The portal is going to automatically assign that 75-25. And if you're requesting a variance, just be sure that you're able to demonstrate and highlight the reasons why you are still able to amplify that NRCS funding, but your project, because of something that requires that additional expertise or that support, does need to go outside of that 75-25 split. So at the bottom, this is a proposal, but we ask that you try to be realistic and accurate as you estimate. If you're awarded funding, you'll continue to refine that through the next stages of the project, but the more accurate we can be at this phase, that paves the way for those future steps in getting that funding delivered and on the ground. Okay, so now we've identified all the who and the what in our proposal. Hopefully you've gathered all the necessary documentation, or you're working on gathering the necessary documentation, and you're thinking about starting to answer the questions that are in the proposal. As a call out, there is an RCPP proposal guide for partners that will take you step by step through the system. So we won't show you every screen, but the slides I just covered are going to give you the information to answer most of the first few questions that appear in the portal. Then you'll come to a group of narrative questions. These are listed in Appendix C of that same proposal guide. They're 18. These are different again for classic versus AFA. And it's important as you approach these that you really focus on that set of bullets that's in the middle. This is your opportunity to tell the story about how you will address that resource concern, how you will deliver NRCS assistance, how you're going to amplify the impacts, how you're going to document partner roles and asks, and then how you'll address any ranking. We'll talk a little bit more about this in just one more slide, but some high-level guidance as you look at each of those 18 questions. Your answers will be evaluated as to whether they are considered responsive. That is, did you answer the question as it was asked? And so some call-outs there. Remember to go beyond the generalities. Demonstrate a cohesive or comprehensive project and project model. Look back at the question and make sure you've answered all the components. Take the opportunity to continue to drive the benefits of the project and to document your understanding of the issues and also of NRCS and RCPP in particular. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Eric, to talk through a follow-up from last week's presentation.
Thank you, Bree. Yes, responsive narratives. We goofed up last week and during the classic narrative, both those responses for narrative question 5 really weren't sufficiently responsive. They touched on the dollar values and said they were addressing NFO priorities, but really a responsive answer should have singled out one or more of the NFO priorities and integrated it with those answers. And those priorities would be climate smart agriculture and forestry through the Inflation Reduction Act, advancing equity, justice, and equal opportunity, projects led by Indian tribes, and urban agriculture. And thank you. So an example of a fixed or revised responsive answer for narrative 5 for the AFA example is this. The project addresses the agency priority climate smart agriculture and forestry through the Inflation Reduction Act easement priorities by acquiring easements that protect wetland habitat managed to contribute to carbon sequestration. There's the tie-in. The project also advances equity, justice, and equal opportunity through inclusion of tribal, beginning farmer veterans, and socially disadvantaged stakeholders' participation in the project development and outreach plan design. Tie-in number 2. The partner coordinated wet meadow restoration work by contractors to achieve landscape scale conservation benefits will result in X dollar amount per acre savings as compared to the NRCS payment schedule rates using individual producer contracts. So that gives a clear tie-in to two NFO priorities, and it says what value will be brought to those by including those. A non-responsive answer is very general. It's not a bad answer. it's very high cut. Using contractors to implement restoration work on adjacent priorities will reduce equipment mobilization costs and address resource concerns faster. Easements will protect the improved ecosystem functions. Well, that's not a bad answer. It doesn't give enough information to evaluate to the extent the project is addressing the priorities and how much value is being added to the project. Next slide, please. And one other question that came in after we closed out with regard to AFA narrative question guidance was, what's the difference between responsive answers to narrative questions and non-responsive? So just to highlight what we demonstrated in the previous slide, a responsive question provides details that demonstrate how the project will address resource concerns in a geographic priority area. It will demonstrate how a partner will deliver the FA and TA. It will demonstrate how the partner contributions will impact the impact of NRCS funding. It will demonstrate a clear understanding of the RCPP program requirements, and it will demonstrate the partner's expertise, qualifications, and capabilities that will be contributed to the project. A non-responsive answer would be generalized statements sprinkled with keywords that may summarize what someone's trying to tell us, but it doesn't give us the details that we can truly evaluate how well the proposal is going to deliver all those things. Thanks, and back to you, Bree.
Sounds great. So I want to just highlight on the screen that we've got some resources here. Those have also been included in the chat. So make sure that you're referencing those as well. And with that, I think that we can go to the next slide and jump into our Q&A. Thank you so much for those of you who have already entered your questions. I want to encourage everybody on the call. This is the time to ask your questions by putting them in the chat. We've got subject matter experts from NRCS available to answer your questions, and we will go ahead and jump into some of those questions now. So the first question that we had asked is, will this webinar slides material be available later to reference after the webinar?
Yes, after it goes through Section 508 or accessibility compliance clearance, these will be made available.
They're also, I believe Maria also makes this available to those who actually attended the webinar session. You should be getting an email with the link to it. But yes, Eric's correct. For everybody else, it will eventually be posted to the website. Our next question is, for RCPP Classic, can you use 25% of awarded amounts for TA activities and subcontractors?
You can use a portion of that 25%. So the full 25% is not all going to the partner. A portion of that, typically 5%, is held back for NRCS's expenses in managing the agreement with the partner and also carrying out the inherently governmental or non-delegable activities, such as signing off on NEPA compliance and doing producer eligibility verifications. Up to 7% can be allocated to the partner for project management, which can be anything from managing the agreement to in-project communications and outreach, outcome monitoring and reporting, and aspects of those things can be subcontracted out by the partner. On the TAI side, under a classic agreement, if a partner is needed to help assist NRCS do the planning and design and checkout work to support producer contracts, they can be awarded TAI to carry out what they have the qualifications and capabilities to do, and which may include the partner hiring a qualified and capable subcontractor to deliver those products aligned with NRCS planning procedures and standards.
Thanks so much, Eric. Our next question is, we're still considering the pros and cons of submitting our application as AFA versus Classic. With all other factors being equal, can you provide general guidance on which funding approach may be more competitive?
Well, I think Classic and AFA are competitive in their own lanes. A Classic proposal is oriented toward a partner who wants to do the project management outreach and reporting because they don't have the staff or the capabilities or the resources to take on all of the NRCS workload. And AFA is the right lane for a proposal if a partner has the resources and the staff to take on all of NRCS's planning and implementation and project management work up to the non-delegable producer eligibility verifications and NEPA compliance sign-off. So that means it's, to be competitive in an AFA, a partner needs to be able to finance all their work on the front end because it's not a grant and we're only reimbursing the partner for completed activities.
Our next question states, under the funding request within the proposal platform, there are a couple of questions that seek information on partner capacity and capability to perform technical assistance deliverables. Then there is an area to submit supporting documents to speak to capacity. Is there a format or guided document for that portion? In past grants, I've seen a current and pending support document.
No, we don't have a template for that. So part of kind of going back to what we talked about in the narrative question portion, in describe where a partner would describe their qualifications and capabilities to deliver technical assistance and tied with an understanding of our program requirements would mean a partner has met with the state or has had some experience with the state and understands what our planning policies are, what requirements need to be met to do a conservation plan to support a contract, understanding of our practice standards, and job approval authorities for checking out different things like structural practices that require an engineering background versus vegetative practices that may require a different discipline experience. So as a partner makes a narrative and describes what their technical skills and capabilities are, they would submit supporting documentation, such as I'll give you an easy example, TSP certification to design and check out specific NRCS practices, or experience working with NRCS that they just document on say a Word document and describe the work they've done in partnership with NRCS in the past and at what level they carried it out. Other professional certifications like a certified range management professional, or they have gotten planner certification by going to trainings with NRCS. There's just about any type of document that you want to use that supports your narrative for your qualifications and capability to deliver different levels of technical assistance.
So our next question is from a participant that says, we believe our proposed project is intimately linked with the Colorado River Basin CCA. Of note, the properties we would pursue for easements are not located directly inside the CCA boundary. However, they are located within counties that are transected by the CCA boundary. My understanding is we would technically be able to apply as the CCA, but will our scoring be negatively impacted based on the geography?
That's a good question. It really, I don't, those types of things will be evaluated by some easement division subject matter experts. So I probably would like to just provide an answer back into the chat after I chat with our easement programs division, because what's going to be evaluated is to what extent the proposed practices or easements are going to address the conservation needs and the identified resource priorities in the CCA. And if they fall, while the technical inclusion of counties that are intersected by it doesn't necessarily translate to the described properties actually addressing what's needed to be addressed in the CCA.
That's great. In our next question, this one says, in our project narrative, we are now writing about how we will determine reporting outcomes. How will the USDA receive data on project outcomes in both qualitative and quantitative terms? What should our project partners be prepared to submit to document outcomes of the project?
That's going to be dependent on the stated outcomes. Some are easier to quantify than others. I will say that we have a number of proposal or projects on the ground right now that bring in university partners who have models that do a really great job of modeling the effects or the impacts toward analyzing as a projected outcome. So really, it's going to come down to you probably meeting with your state coordinator, who might involve, say, a water quality specialist or another type of specialist, erosion specialist from in their state, that can kind of look at what your idea is and what you're proposing as your method for quantifying the outcomes and give you some feedback.
For our next question, we've got some nonprofit partners I am working with are concerned about the single audit requirements needed when they receive more than $750,000 in federal funds per year. Does RCPP partner TA trigger this audit? I've heard conflicting answers.
Yeah, so it's going to be in your general terms and conditions in your agreement that as a partner, you are responsible for maintaining documentation to meet your audit responsibilities.
For our next question, what type of partner contribution letters are acceptable?
A partner contribution letter that identifies the contribution as either cash or in kind. If it's cash, how will it be spent? Will it be assisting producers participating in contracts with their share of the cost under a classic, or will it be covering part of the cost for producer implementation under an AFA, or is it cash that will be the non-federal match for an entity-held easement purchase? On in-kind, it'd be what kind of services or goods are going to be provided to benefit the overall goals of the project. That means anything that's going to help achieve an outcome that addresses the project resource priorities. And then evaluation method. How did you arrive at that number? Because the contributions that are committed to in the proposal carry over into the agreement, and the lead partner will be responsible for all those contributions being delivered to the value proposed. So it's always important to, in your contribution letter, say this is how we arrived at this value, because as you report the contribution, you are going to have documentation that shows that you're reporting actual contributions. So contributions need to be described in a way that we can evaluate it as an eligible contribution, in that it's treating the resource concerns in the project area, and that we know how the value was arrived at, so that we say it makes sense, and we understand how it's reportable, so that nobody falls short at the during the project implementation. And the other aspect is that you identify your indirect admin rate associated with your contribution. So if you're an agency that has a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, federal agreement, that you identify that rate. If you don't have a NICRA, you're held to a 10% de minimis indirect rate. So we look at the contributions to determine, well, also what portion of those is directly supporting the activity versus being an indirect cost, and we'll only accept those as contribution up to the 10% de minimis or the existing NICRA rate that a partner has. And the other aspect of also addressing your indirect cost rate on the front end is, well, if you're getting TA from us, TA cannot pay for the indirect portion of any partner's cost. So some portions of that indirect that you don't get paid for under a TA award can also be documented as contribution.
Next question says, do all partners need to have access to the portal or only lead partners?
Only the lead partner.
And our question after that says, could a for-profit entity from Puerto Rico that rents 100 acres to conserve that land apply for the RCPP?
So a for-profit entity that has a history of working with producers to implement conservation work is eligible to apply as a partner, although the proposal should be looking at assisting other producers. So there's really not enough information to evaluate the question, to what extent that land is eligible as agricultural land, and what eligible producers will be benefiting from the project.
So our next question is about narrative questions related to evaluating project outcomes. Do you have any guidance or pointers on defining or outlining outputs versus outcomes?
Yes. So under the how to apply page, we do have a guide for developing outcomes. But to put it kind of in a nutshell, the outcome is the broader environmental or conservation and benefit that's going to be realized at the end of the project for the entire project area. So it's not the outputs are acres treated, dollars spent. The outcomes would be having a TMDL listed off of impaired water body, or improving irrigation water management efficiency to the point that an endangered groundwater basin on the verge of being adjudicated doesn't go that path. You were looking at a bigger picture. What is a problem for the project area that is solved, or good progress to solving that problem is achieved by the project? That would be the outcome focus.
Our next question states, do expenses that are contracted out by contributing partners need to be outlined in the partner contribution letters, or only as a line item in the budget? So, for example, travel expense to perform work that is the contribution.
So if the partner is paying for a subcontractor's travel to conduct an activity that supports achieving project benefit, they can count that as a contribution and would describe that as a contribution.
Our next question states, in an AFA proposal, can the partner expect NRCS to train their staff, or should partner staff already be familiar with NRCS standards and specifications? Also, if NRCS trains the partner staff, are those hours or slash time getting trained by NRCS and eligible reimbursement?
No, the both NFOs for the classic and AFA both are clear on that. Training is not an eligible expense that can be paid for with our RCPP funds. Part of the proposal process is to identify partners who are ready and have staff that are ready and capable of delivering the necessary technical assistance. That's where maybe a classic might be a more ideal one, where there's not, the partner doesn't have experienced staff. Partner can handle the project management, the outreach, and the reporting, and let NRCS handle the conservation planning, design, and checkout. Under AFA, that again is a lane for RCPP that's best suited to partners that have staff, trained staff that are qualified to do the different planning, design, and checkout work, and or don't need training.
The next question states, are demonstration plots an allowable expense as part of outreach and education under TAE? The purpose would be to demonstrate priority practices that the project will support.
Possibly. It's really going to depend on, this is not a grant to do demonstration projects, but using TAE, a partner may make the case how a demonstration project will help producers who are participating in with contracts to do the work that they need to do. So we need to have a clear tie into supporting the project goals and objectives. And it would not be able to use TAI implementation money. It would have to come out of the enhancement budget.
Thanks so much, Eric. So we still have some time left. If you have additional questions, please go ahead and enter those in the chat. While I'm giving you all a chance to enter some additional questions in the chat, let me just make one more plug for our survey. The QR code is on the screen right now, and I've also put the link for easy access in the chat. Again, any feedback that you provide in the survey, we take very seriously and want to make sure that these sessions are useful for you. So we really appreciate the time and effort you spend to provide us some feedback. So jumping back into some questions, and again, if you have any questions on any RCPP topic, please don't hesitate to enter those in the chat for us to address. Our next question says, during the course of a classic project, if projected TAE budget comprised, if NRCS doesn't use up the FA budget. I don't know that I know what that means.
Could you read that?
Yeah, it says during the course of a classic project, if the projected TAE budget, whoever wrote this in, I think you're going to have to reframe that. I think that there's a little bit of lack of clarity in the middle of the sentence, if you wouldn't mind just clarifying what we're acting. Okay, so I think we got to follow on. Is the projected TAE budget compromised if NRCS doesn't use up the FA?
So the TAE is for managing the project and doing the outreach and managing the reporting and all the way through the end of the project. If the FA is not being used, what that's meaning is there's just not the producer demand, and that would probably reduce the amount of partner TAI that would be going out the door, because the technical assistance for implementation is there to support producer contract development and implementation.
Our next question says, for a CCA proposal, are you limited to only addressing the priority resource concerns and conservation benefits for the CCA? Can you include additional resource concerns or conservation benefits as long as at least one of the CCA priorities is addressed?
Yes.
Our next question says, for classic question, narrative question 6, should the partners listed only be partners who are submitting partner letters, or can we include info on other supporting partner groups that may not be making a formal letter outline contribution, but who would still be supporting the project overall?
You should only list a partner that is going to contribute to the project. Support in spirit doesn't need, is not need to be part of the proposal. The NFO basically says, do not list anyone as a partner who is not making a contribution. So moral support and things like that, they're great, but they're not contributions to be identified or discussed in the proposal.
Thanks, Eric. Our next question is, could you please review the minimum 10% de minimis amount topic again?
Okay, so many organizations have indirect costs, such as support staff who process timesheets, rent, computers, software licenses, telephones, all the things that are necessary in an ongoing office. And those costs are not allocable to the individual activity level. So we can, by statute, we cannot expend RCPP funds on partner indirect costs. So the way indirect costs are determined, partners can get what's called a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement with the federal government. We use the term NICRA for the acronyms for that. And those negotiated rates vary, depends on the size of the entity or organization and their overhead costs. Smaller entities and organizations don't have NICRAs, and the de minimis rate is what's established by statute as the amount of indirect cost we will accept as indirect cost for an entity or organization without a NICRA. When I say accept, as I mean by it's considered eligible indirect cost as contribution.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. Our next question states, for farmers that currently do not have the resources to apply for an RCPP grant, how can they benefit from conservation grants such as this one in the future? What would you recommend?
Well, RCPP is not a grant. It's a partnership program where NRCS funds and partner funds and or technical expertise are made available for producers of all economic levels to come in and apply for conservation benefits. So kind of like, maybe I'll just kind of talk about one of our other programs that's very familiar, EQIP, or Environmental Quality Incentives Program. Any farmer can come in and apply to the program. They have a resource concern that the program is addressing. We have a conservation practice that can address it. A plan's written, conservation practice can be implemented, and the producer can get financial assistance toward applying that practice. And RCPP's land management contracts with producers have rates that can be higher for historically underserved, which could be socially disadvantaged, beginning veteran farmer and ranchers, or limited resource producers. And there's a web link in the I believe in the how to apply page or under one of the documents there that go to where producers could actually go and self-identify. They look at the criteria for being a limited resources producer, which is income-based, the criteria for being a beginning farmer or beginning veteran farmer or socially disadvantaged, and it's project by project whether or not there's a higher rate for what we call HU, or historically underserved producers. And that's how an economically challenged farmer can benefit from the RCPP program, as if a partner or a group of partners bring that program to the area where the producer or producers you're thinking of have their operations.
Thanks so much, Eric. I think with that, I do not see any additional questions in the chat, unless anyone has anything else. Maria, I just had one more come in, well timed. Our next question says, did I understand correctly that for an AFA, we should have 5% of the TA allocated to NRCS for non-delegable work?
Yes.
And any additional questions that anyone has? The last call for questions in the chat. A follow-on question to our last question, is that 5% of the 25%?
Yes.
And a follow-on question to that, so 5% of the TAI?
The 5% of all technical assistance. There's 25% of technical assistance available, and 5% of that NRCS is going to use for the purposes we described. The other 18% can be allocated to enhancement, which is project management, or implementation support. And it's going to be based on the amount that it's going to make sense when a proposal is evaluated is the amount that is obviously there's a sufficient amount of TAI requested to support the amount of FA that needs to be delivered.
So as a clarifying question, I think that the question is whether it's 5% of the project total or 5% of the 25%.
So the 25% comes off the project total. So 5% of the 25%, which would be 5% of the project total, is the amount. So if you, no matter how you slice it, it's 5% off the total project amount, or it's 5% of the 25%, which means 20% is available to negotiate, and 5% of that portion of that 25% is NRCS, inherently governmental.
So continuing along that line, does that apply for Classic as well?
Yes.
Okay. And the next question is, can you provide a high-level description of the scoring process for RCPP applications?
So the scoring process evaluates all of the narrative questions on a grading scale. I wanted to say grading gradient, but I thought that'd be too much of a tongue twister. So you can get anywhere from 0 to 10 points for each of the narrative questions that you respond to, and they're basically evaluated on how responsive the narrative is. How much information does it give to tell us how much or how something is going to happen? And then those cumulative scores, those scores are added up. That's the project score. And along with each one of those narrative questions, a reviewer or review team actually will write down some strengths and weaknesses. So if a project is selected for funding, the weaknesses will become talking points for an agreement negotiation. And they'll also be useful to folks who are not selected into identifying where they can improve their proposal for another submission. So typically, a well-scored proposal will have a lot of strengths and will have very few weaknesses that are discussed as things that can be fixed during an agreement negotiation. I think I can do one more question before I have to go to another meeting.
Sounds great. So I think that there's still a little bit of confusion around the 5% issue. So it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, it's 5% of the project total.
It's 5% of the project total.
Yeah. So it's not 1.25% of the project total.
Right.
It's 5% of the project total.
So when we talk about the 25%, 5%, just say 5% is going to NRCS and 20% is negotiable.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric and Maria, for your SME support. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for everybody for attending this session. One more plug to please go ahead and fill out in that the survey, and we look forward to connecting with you at our next webinar next week.
And thanks
you, everyone.
I look forward to all the great proposals that I know are going to come out of this.
Excellent. Have a great afternoon, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.